Well, good morning, maybe good afternoon to some of you. This is going to be a wonderful webinar. Which we're going to refer to as the TVR set, just to shorten it up. In just a minute, Catherine and I are going to introduce ourselves. We're also going to ask the rest of the AverTech team present to introduce themselves. So before we get started in this incredible topic that is near and dear to my heart, there are some things we want you to know. First of all, we encourage you to please stay on mute when you're not responding in the conversation so that we don't have a lot of background noise. We also ask that when you respond in the conversation, please keep in mind that others are going to want to share too. So if you can keep your responses shorter, it makes room for everybody to be able to share. You're also welcome to put questions in the chat box. Jamie is going to be monitoring the chat box for questions, and we want this to be very interactive. This is not where we're going to present, you're going to listen, and that's going to be the end. We want it to be interactive. So as questions come up for you related to what we're talking about, please put those questions in the chat box. And then there will be times when you can unmute and just ask those questions. Please, if you can, turn your cameras on because we like to see your faces. It makes us feel like we're actually talking to someone, not just a name on a screen. And then make sure you introduce yourselves in the chat box right now. We love it when you put your native greeting in the chat box as well. And for those of you who need CRC credits, this is a webinar that's offering CRC credits. So we want you to email AverTech at the completion of this webinar so that we can provide that certificate. And Miles right now is going to put that email address in the chat box so that you can grab that if you need CRC credits. We're going to put it in there again at the end just to make sure everybody has it. And then as we go through the self-employment training, we're going to be referring a lot to the TVR self-employment website. And if you want to pull up that website and have it there so that as we walk through it, you can do the same, we would love for you to do that. Finally, if you've never been to AverTech's website, we encourage you to go there because AverTech is the American Indian Vocational Rehabilitation Technical Assistance and Training Center. So we encourage you to go to our website. It is full of resources. So with that said, Catherine and I are going to introduce ourselves, and then I'm going to open it up for the rest of the AverTech team to quickly, guys, the word there is quickly, introduce yourselves. So Catherine, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I am Catherine Ibsen. I work out of the University of Montana. I've been here my entire life, practically. I lead the Research and Training Center on Disability in Rural Communities, and that work serving rural communities is how I got connected to Rebecca and her work with the Avers.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm Rebecca Holland. I work for Northern Arizona University in the IHD division. IHD stands for Institute on Human Development, and I work for AverTech as a VR coordinator. And my background in TVR history and VR history goes back to 1996. Wow, a long time ago. And so I am delighted to be with you today and to be co-facilitating. You're going to learn a lot about what we've done in this area and just the way that we've really worked to make this a good tool for the tribal voc rehab programs. All right, rest of the AverTech staff, please pop in and introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Emanuel. I'm a VR coordinator with AverTech, as Rebecca said, housed at the Institute for Human Development at NAU. I have a background in rural VR. I have worked with both state and tribal VR, and I'm glad to be here today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jamie.
Okay, my name is Wayne Daigle. I'm the director of AverTech. Thanks for joining us, and I'll be in the background watching Rebecca and Catherine. So if any questions come into the chat box, I will also help be responding to those. So thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Wayne.
Good morning. My name is Earlson Peacock. I work for AverTech as well at NAU, and I am a community coordinator, program coordinator for AverTech. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Earlson.
Yes, good morning. This is Lee Geshelma. I am with AverTech and I serve as the traditional cultural liaison.
Thank you, Lee. Anybody else from AverTech present? Miles introduced himself in the beginning, so anybody else present? Okay, before I turn this over to Catherine, I want to mention one thing, and that is we are not as interested in rushing through all the material as we are in providing information and having discussion so that this webinar is really beneficial to you. We believe the information is amazing, but you can discover things that we don't get to today. What is most important is that it's meaningful and you're able to interact as we go through this. So with that said, Catherine, take it away.
Okay, let's get going. Next slide, Miles, please. Or whoever's doing it. Okay, our learning objectives. What do we hope to figure out? Hopefully you saw these in the announcement when we sent it out, but we would really like participants to learn strategies for assessing a consumer's readiness for self-employment. So we want to build a little confidence on the counselor end in terms of figuring out if self-employment is a good fit and makes sense for the consumer. And we want to do that in a way that the consumer comes to the same conclusion. We also want participants to learn strategies for assessing the business idea. Is the business idea make sense both from an economic perspective, like will it pull in money, but also from a fit with the consumer and make sense for them and fits with their own strengths and abilities. And then participants will become knowledgeable, we hope, about tools that they can utilize to really support consumers who want to explore and pursue self-employment. So we really are drawing all our information today from the tvrselfemployment.org website. And that was something that we co-developed with many people, probably several people who are here on the call, and really tried to make it a tool that people can access when they need it. And so we want you to know what's available to you, but then we want you to be able to access it at any point, and make sure that you have the knowledge about what's in there. Next slide, please. So self-employment. Self-employment can be a really important option for people with disabilities and rural people with disabilities and people with disabilities living on reservations. First of all, self-employment overcomes some limited job choices and opportunities. So a lot of rural places, it's not a panacea. It's not you can pick any job you want. And self-employment allows for a little more broad selection about what fits for you and ways to then pursue that. It also offers some flexibility to overcome personal and other barriers. So if a disability related barrier such as pain episodes or that kind of thing, you can kind of organize some self-employment businesses to be able to accommodate that. It promotes creativity and choice. It really allows people some self-confidence to be able to do the things that they do well, and to also translate that into providing. And then it can line up with values and cultural traditions, which is really important. So self-employment rates among employed people. So I just want to highlight that self-employment is an important outcome for people with disabilities. So people without disabilities from the general population are self-employed at about 6.1%. People with disabilities from the general population are employed at about 10.3%. And based on these rates, we might expect that VR consumers would get close to self-employment at that same rate, that would make sense. People coming through kind of gravitate towards self-employment at the same rate. However, state VR consumers state VR programs close very few people in self-employment, less than 2%. 2% is generous across programs. Curiously, or maybe this makes complete sense to everyone, AVERS programs are really doing a good job so far supporting people interested in self-employment. About 15% of AVERS consumers close to self-employment. I want to highlight that this is a very rough estimate, that the way the data is collected for AVERS programs is a little bit different, but I reviewed some recent RSA AVERS reports, and rates for self-employment range from 12% to 38%. So it's really an important outcome for AVERS consumers. Okay, so just a very brief background of the TVR set. And I want to highlight with the TVR set that this background is actually put together in a fact sheet. And I believe that if anyone is interested in really learning more, Miles can drop that link into the chat. But it really started with a phone call. Rebecca called the Rural Institute, me, and following up on some materials that my predecessor had developed. And she said, oh, where are those? Where are those resources that I used? And as we talked about it, we realized that the resources were out of date and really not tailored for AVERS programs. And so we kind of brainstormed this idea, like, what if we really modified these materials for AVERS programs, tailored them for AVERS programs, and then created something that was really a good support to for self-employment. We worked with KNAR leadership. We worked with KNAR participants to kind of pitch and hone in on the idea. We submitted this proposal as part of an RTC Rural project within our grant to develop the self-employment toolkit. We did that with several advisors who helped develop the content and shape the content. And now we have transitioned, the site is up and ready to go. And we just got funded for another 5 years to now do some very intensive training on the TVR self-employment website. So that's something that we're in the beginning stages of building out. And then at the end of the 5-year grant, the TVR set, this website will actually transition to the AVERTAC, that it's time for me to pass it off so I could retire. So yay for that. But okay, thanks.
So Catherine, we have a question in the chat that I saw. Jamie, would you read that question for us, please?
Sure. Steve said, why is there a huge disparity in state and AVERS? And I'm guessing he's referring to those numbers that you just showed us.
What I mean, I guess I'm not completely sure. We've done quite a bit of research with the VR programs, not the TVR programs, but the VR programs, in terms of what some of the factors are or reluctance to support self-employment, and it's all over the place. It's like really unclear policies and procedures, confusion among counselors about how to support their consumers, kind of a built-in reluctance about supporting that because they just don't think it's a good idea. So just to highlight what we're going to show you today, there is a companion site that targets VR programs, and both of these sites have kind of been reinforcing to one another, where we kind of started with the VR materials, translated them for TVR, and then brought back a lot of those changes into the VR site. So just highlight that is there. I know that there are some VR participants on the state VR participants on the call, and I would highlight that there's, some similar materials for them.
I just want to say, Steve, that one of the big reasons I think we see that disparity, and this comes from being a director for a TVR program for years, is that there's little to no jobs in a lot of the areas where the TVR programs are located. And we have to become very creative in developing and carving jobs in that situation. So I think that TVR programs are more inclined to do self-employment because there's nothing else, and it is the type of employment that a lot of consumers can go into and make a living. Where state VR frequently is located in areas where there are jobs, and in a lot of ways, it's just easier to, to gravitate someone towards a job than it is to take the time to really help them become successfully self-employed. So we don't know all the specifics, but from my own experience, that's one of the things that I would say. So thank you for that question. So now what we want to do is we want to have a group discussion for a few minutes, and we want to talk about self-employment experiences. And the two things we want all of you to think about is, what are your fears as a TVR staff person? What are your fears when thinking about supporting a consumer in self-employment? And if you don't have any fears, I can't imagine that, but if you don't have any at all, then what challenges have you or do you face when a consumer wants to pursue self-employment? Now, Miles is going to put these questions into the chat. I'm going to stop screen share so that we can have a discussion regarding this. So you can unmute and just share. What are your fears and what challenges do you face? Go ahead, Ms. Benson, because I will not pronounce your first name right. So go ahead.
I think my fears are if they are unsuccessful, what setbacks will it cause if their and self-employment business isn't successful? And what further barriers will that increase or create? And then also with that, like with them having those barriers, how can we assist? Because I know like with our program and with state too, like if you do sometimes a small business and it fails, that's kind of it. And so yeah, I think that was it.
That's a valid fear. So thank you so much. And how do you say your first name?
Kalisha.
Kalisha. Thank you so much, Kalisha, for sharing that. Danielle, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so let me know. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So with our consumers here in Akwesasne, we have a unique situation with consumers that we deal with, especially with our geography. So because our consumers can have businesses both in the US and Canada, they do worry about taxation and how that affects their how that can affect their contributions and any kind of benefits they may be receiving, as well as what that means regarding the process. Do they have to double up with doing 2 different business plans? Do they have to like they're asking more about like what additional steps do they have to do because we have to look at it, we have to look at geographically. We have to look at it from a Canadian perspective, American perspective, or from a territory, or from a tribal perspective.
Wow. That would definitely make me feel a little bit skeptical and fearful too. So thank you for that, Danielle. Someone else.
This is Keith in Oklahoma. I would say not necessarily a fear, but certainly a concern is just making sure that if it's a participant who's already receiving Social Security disability benefits, that person is somehow tied into a benefits planner or someone who can talk to them educably about what to expect when they start earning money through the business, how to report those things. I think that's a huge concern with our participants that are already receiving Social Security disability benefits. You know, there's already a concern about losing the benefit when they earn money anyway, if they don't understand the process or understand the rules that pertain to Social Security disability benefits.
Yeah, that's huge. Thank you for bringing that up, Keith, because a lot of times we don't think about that until we're faced with it. So thank you. We're gonna take a comment from Bambi, and then Jamie, I noticed that the chat box is filling up with some things, so I'll have you unpack that. So go ahead, Bambi.
I was gonna say it's not a fear necessarily, but I think that it would be more beneficial for people who are exploring that self-employment plan to go ahead and take that time. Don't rush into it. Take the time. All right, we're afraid of XYZ. What are our fears for real for this business specifically? And then what for you would be the best way to work with it? An example, we had someone who went through and did their own small business here and didn't think that they would ever get to a point where they could employ people. But had we taken time during their business planning stages, we would have been able to address that.
Wow,
So I think that factors in.
That's a great example. And let's face it, you know, if you've ever done a self-employment plan, these take a lot of time and really should. So thank you for that, Bambi. Jamie, go ahead and unpack some things from the chat box.
Yeah, sure. So going all the way back to Steve's initial question, why is there a huge disparity in state VR and AVERS? Bambi made a comment, and it's true, Bambi. Flexibility and creativity with tribal VR is probably one of the main reasons, I would say. And then Deborah said that in her area, supervisors discourage self-employment. I'd love to hear more about that, Deborah.
Well, let's wait, because we do know that is happening. So not yet, Deborah, but thank you, Jamie.
And then again, just to reiterate what Keith said earlier, he said, I don't think it's as much to do with reluctance as it does to do with what can be considered self-employment, you know, between TVR programs and state VR programs. And then on to the question, what were your fears? What are some of the challenges? Steve said, we experienced 60 to 80% unemployment. I think he was referring to Keith's comment. Lori Walker said fear that they will change their mind and want to do something totally different. I get it, Lori, all that work. And then all of a sudden, everything changes. Frida also said fear if they want to stop their employment goal halfway through the progress. Yeah. And again, you've put all that time and effort, and they have as well. Deborah said health insurance is an issue that people face. Tara said, what are the measurements for success? And I think that's something that Rebecca and Catherine are going to talk about later. Natalia says, I think a concern or fear is that staff do not understand the process of developing a self-employment plan and the components to starting a business. So staff do not feel equipped to assist an individual through this process. Well, maybe after today, Natalia, you'll feel a little better. I believe that today's webinar is going to help with that. And then finally, Debbie DeGrotto said, there's so much more to owning, operating a business. And that's right, Deborah. Budgeting, business, financial management, self-sustaining after TVR's involvement with the plan, marketing, health insurance, retirement, reporting income to Social Security. So a business plan is so vital. Absolutely right, Debbie. And then Daniel also said, you know, community politics sometimes plays a part in it.
Absolutely. Before I ask Danielle what she wants to share, is there anybody else that hasn't shared, you know, a challenge or a fear? Go ahead, Karen.
Michael is
Wait,
frantically waving his arms.
wait, Jamie. Karen, go ahead. Karen raised her
Oh,
hand. So
Well, one of the things that, I actually heard this, the other day on our tribal radio, is that so many tribes have utilized the casino as their small business. And that has been the thing. And what we need to do to encourage the building of communities and cities is small business, because that will holistically help the entire tribe. So that's just a thought that was given to me the other day, and I thought it was really a beautiful thought.
yeah, thank
But
you.
they're welcome. The
That-
thing that I fear is the, like with what Keith said about the Social Security benefits. I have one consumer that I have talked to over and over and over again about this. But I can't control that. I can't control her behavior about this. And all I can do is warn her, and I have, that there may be consequences and that they will be on her financially. And she's not someone who will hear until the consequence happens, because that's who she is.
Yeah.
But the other thing that, you know, in the process of working on the small business, the small business usually starts with one idea, and it develops and changes and grows. It's like a living thing. And so I look at that process of what if they change their mind halfway through as part of the growth and development. I haven't really lost any time, because I'm finding out more about who they are and what they really want or what they really need. So it's actually been helpful in a way to see that happen.
That's
Right
great.
now, right now, I'm terrified of one person I'm working with who is wanting to be a doula, and she started the process. And we have no one like this in, I don't know what the radius would be. I mean, we are a healthcare desert.
Wow.
And so we are a maternity care desert. So having someone who could be a doula would just be astronomically amazing. And it's a different kind of small business, but it's still a small business.
Absolutely.
And so trying to work through the person who is a human who cares about other people and talk about the financials on that and developing the financials. That's a struggle. That is the struggle, and the fear that communication can't happen in a non-confrontational, comfortable way.
Thank you for that, Karen. That was really powerful. Danielle, we're going to hold your question. If you want to put it in the chat box, you definitely can. Because I really, what you're talking about, Karen, I think hones in for me very, very closely on how unique and creative and outside the box thinking that self-employment really lends itself to. So as we move forward, please continue to put your comments, your questions into the chat box. but we want to move on and begin to show you this tool. So Catherine, I'm going to launch it over to you and let you screen share. Well, wait a minute. I think we have one slide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This slide is just a screenshot of the website we'll be doing live in just a second, but I wanted to give people a visual of it. And that will lead into a poll because we just want to know who on the call has ever seen or used the website. So this is a really quick little exercise just to help us know what kind of audience is included. So I'm just going to pass that right back and
okay, so it's
go
coming
for that.
to me. Here we go. So Catherine is a pickleball player, so she's launching the ball over to me right now. So
It was a
poll-
dink.
Oh, okay. So so the poll that you're going to see in just a second is exactly what Catherine just said. Are you familiar with the TVR Set website? And you'll have 3 ways you can respond to this. The first is I have not seen or heard about the TVR Set. The second is I know about the TVR Set, but have not used it consistently. And the third is I use the TVR Set in my work with VR consumers. So go ahead, Miles, and pull up that poll. We're going to give you about a minute and a half to respond to it. And then we'll share the responses. So half of you have responded. You're doing great. Keep going. So we're about 75%. So keep going. %. All right, we've hit the 1 minute mark. So will you go ahead and share the results with us? So here's the results. What we're looking at is that 48% of you have not seen or heard about the TVR Set, which really excites me, because, and I'm sure Catherine too, because we want everybody to know about this and the amazing tool that it is for tribal VR. The second is 48% of you know about it, but aren't using it consistently. And then I want to give a huge shout out to the 4% that are using it consistently with your consumers. So this just really helps us be able to get an idea of who the audience is. Okay, so back to you, Catherine.
Great. Okay, so we just want to let you know just a couple of things that we've really wanted to have for the TVR Set. One is that it's consumer focused. So all the things that are written to the consumer. What is your business idea? How are you feeling about X, Y, and Z? So it makes it easier for the person that you are working with to use the materials as well. It's fully accessible. So that was an important thing that we pay attention to. We have print-only versions of all the information so that if you are living in a place that doesn't have good internet connectivity, you can easily print out the information. All the information is kind of guided, so it helps you go kind of from A to B to C in the process. It's not prescriptive. It doesn't mean that you have to follow it in that way, but it does provide a roadmap. And it's a place that everyone can come to the same location, this website, and look at the same information. So if you are working with maybe a small business incubator, or you have a family member of the consumer you're working with who's helping them put together a business plan or that kind of thing, everyone can come to the same place and see the exact same information. And then I did want to highlight that it's all user informed. So we have VR counselors and TVR counselors who inform the information. We have consumers who've started their own businesses inform the information. So it's really hopefully getting at a number of different kind of perspectives. So with that, I am going to give you a live tour. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Hopefully this will work. I think it will. So is everyone seeing the TVR website? Will you give me a
Yes,
heads up? Okay,
yeah,
great.
we are.
So I'm first going to just give you an overview of what's here and how it's laid out. So the chapters include 8 chapters. The first 3 chapters, the overview, the readiness, and the business feasibility chapters, really are kind of exploring self-employment. That's where you are spending time with a consumer, trying to figure out if self-employment is a good fit and the business is a good fit. I know a lot of people on the call were talking about some of the kind of, oh, we get partway down this path and then back up. This isn't their idea anymore, and that sort of thing. This is an opportunity to really take some time to work through that idea and readiness. So you might at this point during the first 3 chapters take a little break and maybe assess some different opportunities or choices, but this is where you can do that. When you get to the business plan, marketing plan, operations plan, financial plan, hopefully the consumer is settled in. They're really committed to the idea and how to move forward with it. And this is where they can kind of spend more time really thinking deeply about their business plan. And then we also have a chapter on subsistence activities, which is for consumers who might be using traditional practices to support their community, to barter with, etc. And we have additional information on that. I also want to show you how the chapters are laid out. Each chapter is laid out a little bit like a file folder. And so these file folder labels are your cue to find out what information is included. So we have a number of different ways to, for instance, explore self-employment. I'm going to get into these, but these are the different sections. So this is how you would go through material and also find material. On the top is the website navigation bar. You can get to any chapter by doing the down arrow on the chapters. We have a variety of resources that people can look at that are external to the website, such as business development resources, funding resources, that sort of thing. We have all of the materials at the ready. So all of these materials are described when you're in the chapter, but sometimes you may want to just grab a glossary or grab a worksheet that you know about. They are all located in this material section, and they're all downloadable files. So you can download them to your computer and use them. There's a little bit of information on website navigation. That's if people are using, for instance, a screen reader with the website. We have some suggestions for that, and just some background about the website. So that is an overview, and that's as far as we're going to go, because we are going to go into next some of the content, and I'm going to pass it. I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to come back to this. And I now have done this. I've done this. Stop share. Okay.
All right. So we're going to go back to our PowerPoint. And
I talked about that. So you can just skip that.
Yeah. So Catherine talked about chapter progression. So I want to specifically share with you this part in chapter 1, which is the overview, where we're really encouraging the TBR programs to look at a self-employment process. And, you know, I know that when I was at the Pueblo of Jemez doing specific, well, directing the TBR program, we didn't have a self-employment process. And so, and that was because we really didn't know what we were doing. So what the overview, the chapter 1 has many TBRs look at is, what might that flow look like? What are the elements to include in the process that you develop? And so the things that are listed there are not, okay, as a TBR program, you have to use all of these, or you have to include all of these, because we all know one size doesn't fit all in TBR. So you're going to look at these different elements, you'll read about them, and then you can determine what the best fit is for your TBR program when it comes to the process that you want to include in your self-employment when someone comes in and wants to do that as an employment outcome. So the very first thing that we look at is the comprehensive assessment. Now, any of you who have known me for, 5 minutes will know that I call this the grade 8. And the reason for that is the comprehensive assessment includes 8 specific areas that we're looking at with the consumer. And the comprehensive assessment isn't a one and done, okay? When a consumer comes through our doors and they want to be a referral, we're already starting that process of comprehensive assessment, and we're doing that process all the way through to the end, case closure, post-employment, whatever those end pieces might be. And so comprehensive assessment is extremely important when we're working with people who want to do self-employment, because we're looking at their strengths, their abilities, their capabilities, their interests, their priorities, their concerns, their resources, and their informed choice. And when we're looking at those things overall with them for self-employment, it begins to bring to the surface those things that will be there or not be there as they move forward to develop a business. So comprehensive assessment, it's in everyone's grant, and it's something probably everybody will include in the process. Consumer readiness, and we're going to talk about that at length. Consumer readiness, how do we figure out if a consumer is ready to move forward for self-employment? Business feasibility, like, are we going to slow the process down, like Karen said, and make sure that there is a possibility that feasibility means it can happen? Are we going to look at business feasibility, which is different from readiness? And then what about preparation? What are we going to do in terms of preparation? And that can really be where your individualized plan for employment begins to be created and developed. And most of the time with an IPE, an individualized plan for employment, a self-employment plan is going to look very different than an employment plan that's moving towards a career in a job, because it's going to happen in phases. And I want to do a plug right now for the regional trainings that we're going to be doing for self-employment. At those self-employment trainings, we're going to be talking about the development of that IPE. And how do you do that in stages? How do you do it in a way that slows the process down for discovery, and then maybe implementing some things that have to do with cost services later on? Also, what role is a business plan going to play in your process? And remember, that business plan doesn't have to be a 56-page plan that you're going to present to a bank. It can be a very, very simplified plan if that business is simplified, or it can be more extensive if the business is going to be something like a franchise. Then what about the TBR program reviewing that business plan and looking at it and all the components and talking about it with the consumer? What about securing additional funding? Is that going to be a part of your process? And as securing that funding, if needed. Maybe it's not needed because that business is a small business. Now, I want to do a plug to State VR right now and say to you guys that when you're working in collaboration with Tribal VR and they have a consumer who wants to do self-employment, that collaboration and that dual case can be so helpful because the funds in Tribal VR are limited and a lot of times minimal. So working together with State VR can maximize the funding and the resources that are available. And Amanda, I saw in the chat, you wrote about sometimes those businesses are extremely expensive and collaborating with the state can help come down to sometimes what's realistic for that business to start, and then also to utilize resources from both. What about developing supports? You can't do self-employment in an island all by yourself. You need the supports around you for it to be successful. And then what about running the business? Who's going to help? How is it going to happen? Are there going to be employees? And then ultimately, how do we do case closure in TVR when someone has self-employment and that business as their outcome? So when you're looking at that overview, we're also encouraging you as a TVR program to think about that process. Now we want to do another group discussion, and Miles is going to put these questions into the chat box. In a minute, Jamie, I'll ask you to maybe unpack just a few things from the chat. All of you are able to look at those, read those, but you know, we don't have enough time to read everybody's. So we want to do a group discussion, and then Jamie, I'll ask you to go ahead and share some things. So here's the discussion. The focus is on readiness experiences. What helps you decide if a consumer is ready to explore self-employment? So what are you looking for? As a VR staff member, what are you looking for? And then what are some red flags that you've seen when a consumer wants self-employment? And you're sitting there listening or seeing, and you're inside, you just kind of feel this grip. And there's that red flag. So those are going to be the two questions we want to talk about right now. And again, if you haven't shared, unmute and share.
So again, this is Keith in Oklahoma, and I would say both from a state perspective as well as working as a TVR counselor, one of the biggest, or I guess I would say most immediate indicators as to whether or not the consumer is going to follow through is just those initial instructions, just talking to them about the initial assessment, just talking to them about the process and their willingness to follow through in the process. I think one of the saddest things I see routinely is that the counselor may get really excited about the helping this person gain self-employment, but when you're putting more as a staff member, if you're putting more energy into the venture than the consumer is, you're already approaching it from the wrong side. If the consumer needs external motivation to follow through, that's a true indicator as to whether or not they're going to be able to sustain the business, which is the purpose.
Thank you, Keith. That was really good. Thank you. Someone else. And maybe someone who has.
Carrie has her hand up.
Yeah, okay, Carrie, let's have you share. Carrie had her hand up. I think Danielle, you have your hand up. Is there, and Danielle, you go ahead and share, and then some of you haven't shared. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this. So go ahead, Danielle.
So on the red flags portion of it, we have consumers that like to move very, very quickly. I understand their eagerness and wanting to do this, but not for them. They think that they've put in all like the thoughts, what needs to be in the plan, or they've seen the plan, seen a business do what they're doing, so they think they're ready to just run, where they're not sure of all the other intricacies and, you know, the back end portion of it. And then when asked how, like, what are your plans for this aside from just running a business, they don't have any. So those are a couple of the big red flags that I've seen from businesses or from individuals who want to start a business.
That's excellent. You hit it on the head, so thank you.
Yeah.
Someone else. Again, you'll see in the chat the questions, but the questions have to do with what are the red flags you've seen? How do you know if someone's ready to move forward? And maybe some of you have never done self-employment yet. And so, Kalisha, did you have your hand up? Kalisha's like, no. Kalisha's like Carrie. Carrie's like, I was just stretching. Kalisha's like, I was just messing with my hair.
Carrie, do you see your hand up on the screen?
No, she said she was just stretching. So
Oh,
go
that's-
ahead, Michael. Michael, I can definitely see you. Go ahead.
I had some individuals come in and, you know, they talked about self-employment.
Can't hear you, Michael.
I had individuals come in, were asking about self-employment. Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I turned it 100%. But they come in at first, they say, well, I was thinking about self-employment, but usually there is about a lot of people making starvelings. There's a lot of people do the beading. There's a lot of people doing these other things that they thought of, and they're good. They're all good, but there's a. I don't think. I said, well, I said, you got to think about it first. You know, see if it's gonna. You can make something, and I said, for us, you have to have a business plan, and you got to go to these things, and you have to put money back into it, and you know,
Yes. Yes, very important.
we help you along the way, but it's gonna only last for a while because you're gonna have to learn this and to stock some money away so you can buy your product.
Yeah.
Not us, but you're gonna start buying your product. So you're gonna have to start doing the books and doing some books, and then they kind of like that part. It kind of gets they kind of get discouraged on that part.
Yeah, they as we move on is that Catherine's she's gonna talk about false beliefs and these things that consumers who have never had a business or done any type of self-employment, they're thinking this is going to be easy. And when you begin to talk about all those different aspects of it, suddenly it's not so easy. So thank you, Michael. Jamie, is there anything in the chat that you want to share? Just a few things.
Yes, sure. Karen said that, they've got to be ready to make the commitment to the long-term work. And a red flag is that if they are unwilling to utilize the services to manage their disability, then that may be a red flag. Who else? Hold on, let me pick out. Carrie said her answers were stolen. Melissa said she had a participant who said he was interested in the process and seemed very interested in the beginning, but during the process he failed to continuously be available for meetings, so just kind of fell away. And Danielle says she knows they're ready to move forward because they are able to answer the why questions.
Wow. So you can see that, and if you've never done self-employment, you will experience this, but you can see those things coming up where there are some things that show us readiness, but then all of a sudden there's a bunch of things that show us red flags, or maybe just some things that haven't been considered yet. So Catherine, I'm going to have you take it from here.
Let's do it. Are you seeing my screen? Hopefully. Yes? No? Let's try again. This will stop screen sharing. Do you want to continue? No. Are you seeing my screen?
No, go ahead and share it again.
Okay, I'll try it again. There.
Now we
I
see
think
it.
that's better. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, so I wanted to show you where we are, orient you. We are in chapter 2, and we're going to look a little bit at readiness. So a lot of the things that were brought up were really thinking about, well, maybe people aren't really quite aware of what self-employment looks like and feels like. And this section of false beliefs is a place where the counselor and the consumer can go through some false beliefs that an individual might have, and then kind of have some talking points about what the reality is. And this is a really great first start when someone's like, I want to have a food truck and I'll be able to support my family in 2 weeks, or that kind of thing. So we have listed a number of different false beliefs. Like, for instance, it will be easy to turn my hobby or craft into my business. We hear a lot of people like, oh, I'm going to start doing this thing that I've always done for family and friends or whatever. But you might have to think about all the other things you need to do, such as advertising or managing your finances, and really highlighting that starting a business isn't just making your product at a higher rate. It's all these other things that go into that. Same for self-employment is my vocational goal. I saw a thing in the chat about someone wanted to start a food truck, and have you ever done any cooking? No. So it's like you need to figure out what your vocation is, and then self-employment is a vehicle, is a way to do that vocation. But first you have to start about the skills that are required to actually do the task at hand, which in this case would be cooking. So, you know, maybe a person learns more about how to cook or what that looks like, or you know, works in a small kitchen before they're striking out and starting a food cart, that kind of thing. There are a number of these different false beliefs. Another one, it won't take long to get my business up and running. Depending on the size and scale, it could take a long time. So it's just a way to essentially not make it personal. You're not arguing with the consumer about their perceptions of self-employment. These are really common false beliefs, and this place allows you an opportunity to have a conversation about some of those. There is a section on values, and really getting people to think about how starting a business will really change how they spend their day.
Yes.
And what they maybe have to give up to make time for the business. And does it fit with how they like to live their lives? So we have a worksheet that I'm going to show you in a minute where people talk about the different things that they value. Let's say someone likes to be really physical, and they've identified a self-employment job that will require them to sit at a desk in a really small space for a long period of time. That just may not fit over the long haul. Or maybe it's someone who is not very social. They don't like to go into crowds. They get kind of nervous talking to people, but they like to make jewelry or things like that. Well, they need to think about, it's not just the making of the jewelry, it's the selling of the jewelry. And that may require them to go to different craft fairs or powwows or things and really engage and pull people in to buy the said things. So it's just having an opportunity for people to think about that. Now I'm going to show you, sorry for the scrolling, but show you a worksheet that includes some of this stuff. So these worksheets can be printed. You don't need to have the website to do it. People can just write in answers, but to kind of think about the things that they really, what kind of person are they? And then what is the proposed business? And will it support, compete, or kind of contribute both to their business? So if I'm going to show a quick example. So Elena enjoys being physically active. She likes to be outdoors and she feels less stressed and centered. She also enjoys her time with close friends and family, but gets overwhelmed at large social events. And she values being part of a supportive community. Her proposed business was to make wreaths and different arrangements for holiday and different seasons. She writes down that wreaths are made of natural materials. She can go out and collect those materials, and that will actually be a good fit. And also making wreaths isn't overly physical, but it can keep her going. So that actually is a supportive fit. The business will require me to market to customers and go to events. That might be a positive one, but in terms of the actual making of the wreath, you know, it's kind of it's a lonely thing. And then supporting and running my business will compete with the time she spends on her family and tribal responsibilities. So it's just a way for consumers to have a little self-reflection about how that business is going to fit. We also have some worksheets on business owner traits. So Keith talked about, you know, follow through and the importance of that. Well, this traits worksheet is a way for people to essentially describe their strengths in different areas. So what is an example from their past when they've done planning, when they've done some planning, or when they've really demonstrated that they can follow through on something, or that they're a problem solver, or that they're a leader, or that they're passionate about something, or meet multiple demands. These are all kind of traits that are associated with running a business. Like, it's good to have these traits, and it's an opportunity for people to just reflect a little bit on whether they have these strengths, and they can put a check by where they think their strongest traits are.
Catherine, can I jump in and just say something?
Sure.
Keep in mind that all the things that Catherine is talking about is readiness. So when you're doing an individualized plan for employment with a consumer, and it you know, they're looking at creating a business, the very first part, that counseling and guidance part, that discovery part, can just be focused on readiness, which is what she's covering. Are they ready based on everything they're learning?
Awesome. And I'm going to show one additional worksheet, and this kind of got at some of the concerns that people had about all the different skills and how will it fit with your disability. There's a readiness self-assessment worksheet, and there's an example of what that is in here. But this talks about, like, why do you think self-employment is a better choice than getting a job? Can you explain why? It's getting at those why questions. What are your reasons? Does it make sense in terms of the realities of self-employment? So after you've gone through kind of those false beliefs, does it still fit? How does it fit with your thing? How will you pay your bills until your new business owns a profit? Like, you actually have to think about the fact that you don't start a business with your full complement of consumer or customers. It takes time. And there's a window that you have to think about. What financial resources do you have, or that you could get to help you get started? Business skills. There are a lot of skills that people need to think about in terms of running a business. Do you know how to use a computer? Do you know how to do any bookkeeping or record keeping? Do you know someone who you could hire to do that for you? Do you have any idea how to advertise or reach customers? So this is kind of some thinking about just business skills, not related to your business, just general skills about what it takes to run a business. Then accommodations. What do you need to run your business. Like if you aren't good at verbal communication, how are you going to talk to customers? If you aren't good at math or managing money, who can help you with the bookkeeping? These are really important things that need to be done if you're running your own business. So it's thinking about that. And then some other challenges. Do you have some challenges that would make running your business hard? Especially, like, do you have to think about what your business looks like because you have a debt or poor credit? You probably aren't going to be able to borrow any money from a bank if you don't have good credit. So how does that look like or shape what your business idea is? So what I want to highlight from this chapter is that these are all different things that you can touch on with a consumer based on the consumer that walks in the door. You don't have to do all of these. You might want to do all of them, but each one is tailored to maybe something. When Rebecca was talking about that, like your gut sort of clenches up, you can kind of go, you know, my gut is clenching up because of these false beliefs or some of the things that you haven't really thought about in terms of running a business. And you can pick and choose the worksheets that work for you. Before I move off and hand things back to Rebecca, I do want to highlight, I did see in the chat that some people were worried about if they didn't have internet connectivity. And I just want to highlight that as long as you can get internet connectivity somewhere, like you can visit the site, you can print out these things. They're all ready for you to download and print out. And so you can hand a packet of material to anyone. And that includes all the information on the website and all the worksheets. So, you know, there's that values worksheet. It's ready to be downloaded and you can just print it out. So just wanted to highlight that. Okay, I'm going to go away. Yay!
You're not going to go away because you're not done yet, but I'll step in at this
Okay.
point. And I do want to say that, you know, the advisors that helped put this together were all from TVR programs. And so everybody provided input. I absolutely love the website and the tools because I can pick and choose. It's not one size fits all. Like I said earlier, you can pick and choose based on that individual that comes through your door. So I want to do another poll, and this particular poll has to do with those false beliefs. So in a minute, Miles is going to pop the poll up. And what we want to learn about is which false belief do you see the most in your consumers, or if you've never served one who wants self-employment, what do you think it might be? So there are 5 responses. The first is, it will be easy to turn my hobby or craft into a business. The second is, it won't take me long to get my business up and running. The third, I will be good at running my business because I'm good at making my product or providing my service. Self-employment is a good fit for me because I don't work well with others. Somebody put that in the chat. And self-employment offers me flexibility. I can work whenever I want. I can work as little or as much as I want. So Miles is going to put the poll up and we'll give you a minute. Which one of those do you see happening the most? And as many responses as possible would be great.
This is Miles. Just let me jump in and say that every now and then some people's systems don't allow them to see the poll. So go ahead and answer in the chat if that's the case for you.
That's great. Thank you, Miles. So we're at about 45, 46%. So keep going. Looks like that last false belief is going to be the winner here, unless one of the other ones catch up pretty quickly. We're at 61%. Again, which false belief do you see the most in your consumers? Or do you think you will see the most? We're at 68%. 72. Once we get to 75, we'll share. All right, Miles, we're at 75%. So go ahead and share those results. So what you'll see is that for most of you, the first at 27% and the last false belief at 39% are what you're seeing the most. And there may be other false beliefs, but these, because within these, this is what you're seeing. So thank you everyone for participating and providing comment in that. Now, I want to talk just very, very briefly about how you're going through that readiness process. And now it's time to have some mutual understanding discussion. So you saw Catherine talk about values, traits, skills that all are connected to readiness. And so what we want to do after we've gone through that, you know, some of those worksheets and looking at some of the information is we want then to do consumer exploration of readiness. And this is where we sit down, and maybe we've been sitting there all along with the consumer, which is the most ideal, as they go through parts of the website, and we have that conversation. And this is where motivational interviewing can be really helpful. And motivational interviewing is asking questions that help that consumer explore their own answers. So what we're trying to do in this part is we're trying to get them to recognize if indeed they're ready to move to the next stage, or if this is not something that is a good fit. And so as we have these discussions and we look at the outcome of some of the forms they've filled out, it really sets the stage for us to have either that exciting, energized conversation to go to the next piece, which might be feasibility, or that conversation about the glitches, the problems, the identified challenges that are coming up. So this helps the VR staff member not sit across the desk and someone's sitting there and comes in and says, I want to be a silversmith. And you know, there's 500 in the community that are all struggling because they're all really good, but they can't all get all the customers.
Right.
And you're sitting across from them and all you want to do is say, no, you know, the market's saturated with that. That's not going to work. You might feel that internally, but we all know that's not good counseling and guidance. Like counseling and guidance is saying, well, let's look at this. And so getting on the website and going through some of this creates that atmosphere where our goal, our hope is the consumer is the one who's able to say, I don't think that's going to work. And as much as I want it to, these are things I never thought about, and it's not going to work for me. Now, that's the best scenario, you know, but it is that opening of that door for that conversation to be had. And so that's really key when we're looking at having those conversations. So what we want to do right now is have another group discussion. And this has to do with business feasibility. So what we're looking at here is what helps you determine if a consumer's proposed business is feasible. We're going to move from readiness into, let's say we give a, you know, there's a thumbs up on readiness. They're ready. Now, is that business feasible? Is it possible? Does it make sense? And so what helps you determine if the consumer's proposed business is feasible? And again, what are some red flags you might have seen in this area? And Miles is going to put that in the chat for you. Again, if you have not shared, we'd love to hear from you. So share with us, what are those things that help you see feasibility and what might be some red flags? Cricket.
Yeah, Elise.
Don't start now, please.
Elise, do you
Had
want to share?
coffee.
Elise, do you want to share something?
Wayne does. I think Carrie is good. She looks like she's ready.
We have
Very
one that's
good.
still going,
Okay.
that with our humongous one, she's still going. And still worries me because it looks like she's changed plans again. I don't understand how we can keep going with it. We went from like having an art studio to doing this, to doing that, but doesn't like being around a lot of people, but the studio would be in her home, and then dog grooming to flagging to, constant changing of mind, and the business plan doesn't exist. And, the self-employment toolkit, I think, will come in very handy. And I just hope that they actually start this process and be like, okay, this is just not feasible. It's not feasible. We need to shut this down and maybe something completely different or close, But there's a ton of red flags with this one, and the fact that it's been this many years and the plan was never started is pretty bad. And there's too many anxiety issues around a lot of this stuff. And yeah, anywho.
Yeah, so Lori, that was really powerful because I think, Keith said it a little bit earlier, when you're working harder than the consumer and trying to figure out, and you're getting frustrated on the inside, you've got this swirl and it feels scratchy when they're asking for another thing. And all of that is telling you something.
Yeah.
And it is really key that in those kinds of situations, we slow down and even step back a little bit. So Lori, you're right. And coming to this website and being able to take some time in exploration, even if they're a little further down the road, it's okay to take that step backwards and be able to say, let's take a little bit more time in talking this through. Now, I do want to say, I'm looking at the clock. We have about 10 minutes left. There's no way that Catherine and I can go through the rest of the TVR website. And I said in the beginning that probably wouldn't happen because interaction is so important. But I want to say this. This website, as you saw in the beginning, is not being used the way it could be. And I'm telling you right now, knowing it, it is an incredible resource and can really help with successful self-employment outcomes. And I also want to say that our first regional training is in July. And we're going to take 2 full days and dive in and really work on learning the things in the TVR set. So we'll share that a little bit more later. But Catherine, do you want to just kind of, I know that people want to ask questions, but do you want to kind of close us out here?
Well, I'm hoping we can do just a little bit. I would like to share my screen one last time and just show some of the feasibility tools that are there, because I just think it's important and I think I can get through it. I'm a fast talker. Well, I'm not, but can try. So I'm going to try it. Okay. I just want to highlight that business feasibility, once you get going on the business, you need to have a number of other things besides the product or service, right? We've been talking about it. I can make all the silver bracelets and rings and necklaces that I need to sell. I just don't have customers. I don't have management and operations experience, and I don't have financing. So I think that you have to think of a business beyond just the product, and you have to do that kind of thinking, and it's important to do that. The other thing that you need to do is figure out scale. How much do you need to sell to actually have enough to support yourself? And I want to highlight and show this cost evaluation worksheet, because I think it's a really easy, simple way for people to get a ballpark estimate of how much they would need to do to cover their costs. It's not a business plan per se, it's just a quick exercise to do that. So people, when you have a business, what you need to do is cover your personal living expenses. That's important. You need to cover your bills. And so you just estimate what your bills are. And I'm going to say, okay, my monthly bills are about $2,200. I have $1,200 in rent. I have 250 utilities, about 500 in food. That goes up every week. We have insurance and gas. So we have this amount, and I'm going to put it in. So this is a way for people to really quickly get to this. How much is it going to cost me to just have a business? Not the materials that go into making the product or service, but just the things that I have to pay every month. These are your fixed costs. You pay these costs whether or not you sell anything. And these might be things like you have to pay for your web hosting fee. You have to pay for a phone. You have to pay for Etsy if you're selling online, that kind of thing. And for our purposes, I'm just going to estimate that at $100. A lot of home-based businesses don't cost you much in terms of running them. My business is to make ribbon shirts. I want to make traditional ribbon shirts. And I have looked online and I've looked on Etsy, and I see that there's a range of prices, costs for those, but that $120 seems in the ballpark. So I'm just estimating that based on what I see out in the field. And how much does it take to make, in terms of not labor, just the materials, how much does it cost to make that? And I'm going to say about $20 per shirt in terms of fabric and snaps and ribbons, whatever. So this worksheet, you put that information in, and this worksheet calculates your total monthly expenses, how much you will make for each item that you sell, $100, and how many you would need to make each month and sell each month. So you need to make 23 shirts and sell 23 shirts every month to cover your costs. To just cover your costs, not living on the high hog, just covering your costs. And this is a tool that allows them to go, wow, that seems like a lot, or I could do that, or I'm not sure. But this is a way to kind of fast track some of those discussions about what the business is, what it looks like, what they're thinking of selling, that kind of thing. And this can easily be, oh, I just realized there's more costs. I forgot about that cost. You can just plug it in, and all of a sudden, oh, now I need to make 25 units. So this is just a tool to help people do that estimating. Included in this feasibility chapter, there are 3 other worksheets, and these worksheets focus on about you, about the person, about the business. So have they thought of the business name? Have they described what it does? Have they thought about how to do day-to-day operations? How they're going to organize the structure? This is really important when you're thinking about benefits and how they interface with the business finances. It also is a very important thing if you're thinking about having employees. Guess what you can't have without a business identification number is an employee. You can have a business yourself and use your social security number, but that does not fly once you actually are hiring someone. So just some of these things to think about. What about your customers? Who are they? Do you know who they are? Where do they live? If you only have 400 people living in your community, you're probably not going to be able to sell 23 shirts a month.
No.
Unless you have a lot of opportunities to wear those shirts. So I just think that it's just important to think about all those things. And then there's a startup cost worksheet. And this worksheet helps people really think about all the different startup costs they might need to run that business. And once again, this worksheet is pretty cool because you can go, okay, I need fabric. and I'm going to get it from, I'm just going to go Joann's. I don't know where you get fabric. And I need like 20 yards to make a month's worth of shirts, because you kind of think about it in terms of that. And each yard is $8, say. Well, then, okay, you need $160 just to get some inventory into your process. This worksheet provides you all the different kinds of things. There's inventory, there's equipment, there's an equipment sheet, there's a furniture shelf, like you might need to do some buy a computer or things like that. There might be remodeling costs. It includes all these different worksheets. And at the very last, it provides you a running total of all those things. So it doesn't look like I added that. Wait, it didn't go. Why? Okay, I hate that when something goes wrong when you're looking, but it's supposed to total those. And I'm not sure why that happened, but I'm going to try something else. Test. And we'll go 3 and 2 and yeah, that one totaled. So I'm just thinking that maybe there's something messed up on the first one. Nope, it's there now. I don't know, it had to be prompted. But then at the end, you have your total sheet that you can kind of begin to realize how much money you actually need to have to get going. So these are the ways to begin to look at business planning. And these together, the about you, about your business and startup worksheets, are an opportunity to provide a little abbreviated business plan to decide whether or not you want to continue on in the process.
So Catherine,
that was too much. I know, we're up at the time.
Well, so I do want to say that one other thing in the self-employment website is we do have a whole chapter on subsistence. And that was put together working with some Alaska TVR programs. And so if that is something that you're doing, that whole chapter on subsistence is just amazingly helpful. I do want to just share a couple ways that you can learn a little bit more with what we're doing and with the TVR set. So the first is we're going to be a Canar, and we're going to do a breakout session. That breakout session is going to be focused on, are consumers ready? What is the readiness? And so we want to let you know about that. And then we're starting the tailoring of our regional trainings. And our very first one is in Tulsa, Oklahoma in July. Starting next week after the 15th, we're starting to receive registrations from anywhere that people would want to come from for that. There's no cost for the training, but your travel is a cost to you. And so I did put a flyer in the chat. If you want to look for that, you can find that, but it is in the chat, so you can grab that. And then last but not least, Miles is going to put in the chat that email address that you want to email if you want CRC credits for this webinar. And I know that I can tell from this webinar, we needed a whole day to do this. So I've appreciated your interaction. I know there were a whole bunch of amazing things in the chat. We're going to save those things, and then Catherine and I will address those and send them out by email to all the participants, because we don't want you to think you put your question in there and then we just ignored it. So we'll look at those chat questions. We'll come up with, a response sheet, and we'll get that out to all of the participants.
Rebecca, if folks cannot attend this regional training, are there others that will be coming up?
There are. The grant that we're on right now is going to allow us to do a couple of regional trainings. We're also working with Northwest Indian College, the TVR Institute, to do a credit class on self-employment, tribal self-employment. So stay tuned for more information. Any final thoughts or comments from you, Catherine, while people are doing our webinar evaluation survey?
No. No, I'm just really happy to have the opportunity to share the information. And as usual, I just wish that we had more time to unpack it. I don't know what the secret sauce is in terms of trying to figure out a balance between really getting through more of the content and letting people kind of feel it and the busyness of life, right? So,
And hopefully you
but
got.
thank you for attending.
Yeah, and hopefully you got a feel for it and you can go to the website now and play around with it and see all the amazing things. So here's our contact information if you want to reach out to us. Thank you everyone so much for being here today. And we're really appreciative for the time you took to be here.